the frozen Empress. The galaxy spoke her name with fear. The Alien Empress was known as the woman with a heart of ice. Her empire stretched across 100 stars, and her word was law. Soldiers obeyed her without question. Enemies trembled when they heard her ships were near. To the galaxy, she was power itself. But to those who lived inside her palace, she was something worse, cold, untouchable, and merciless. The Empress rarely showed her face. When she did, her silver crown and black robes made her look more like a statue than a living being. Her golden eyes carried no warmth, only the weight of command. People bowed, people obeyed, but nobody dared to look too long into her eyes. They said her heart had frozen long ago, and yet, inside that cold palace, there was one life she could not ignore. Her daughter. The young princess was small, fragile, and unlike the Empress in every way. While the Empress stood tall and proud, the girl was weak and disabled. She could not walk without pain, could not run like other children. For years, she spent her days in silence, sitting near the great crystal windows of the palace watching stars pass by. The Empress gave her food, guards, and care, but she gave her no warmth. Not once had the palace walls echoed with the Empress's laughter. Not once had the daughter felt her mother's hand gently holding her own. The palace staff whispered behind closed doors. "The Empress does not love her child," they said. "Her heart is too cold." But no one dared speak these words aloud. One evening, something unusual happened. The grand dining hall was filled with soft music. The Empress sat at the highest seat, silent as always, while servants moved quietly between tables. Among them was a human waiter, just one of many slaves taken from Earth. Humans were common in the Empire, often used for small work, cleaning, or serving. To most aliens, humans were weak and simple. This particular waiter seemed no different. He carried trays, bowed low, and kept his head down. But his eyes often drifted toward the princess, who sat alone near the corner, her hands folded on her lap, her gaze lowered to the floor. The Empress watched without speaking. But when she turned her eyes away for a moment, something strange caught her attention. The human waiter was moving differently. At first, it looked like he was simply shifting his weight while balancing a tray. But then his steps became more deliberate, more graceful. The music in the hall grew louder, and the waiter began to move with the rhythm. His arms lifted slightly, his feet tapped softly. He was dancing. Not a grand performance, not a bold show, just a simple, quiet dance while pretending to serve. His movements flowed like water, light but full of life. The Empress frowned. Was this human mocking her? Did he not understand the danger? To dance before the Empress without permission was an insult, a crime punishable by death. She raised her hand to call the guards, but then she noticed something else. Her daughter was watching. For the first time in many months, the girl's dull eyes widened, her lips trembled. And then, softly, shyly, she laughed. The sound was like a bell in the silent palace. The Empress froze. Her daughter laughed. The waiter continued his quiet dance, pretending it was just part of his serving. Each spin, each step was simple, but it carried warmth. He leaned closer to the princess as he placed a tray, giving her a quick smile. The girl smiled back, brighter this time. The Empress's hand slowly lowered. She did not call the guards. Instead, she watched. Something stirred inside her chest, something she had not felt in years. Her heart, frozen for so long, felt a small crack, but she forced her face to remain cold. No one must see weakness. She sat motionless on her throne, her golden eyes fixed on the human. The staff noticed nothing. To them, the Empress was still as untouchable as ever. But inside her mind, questions burned. Why was this human dancing? Why did her daughter react to him when she never reacted to anyone else? And why, for the first time in forever, did the Empress feel the urge to smile? The music ended. The waiter bowed and returned to his duties as if nothing had happened. The girl still giggled quietly to herself, a faint blush on her cheeks. The Empress remained silent, her face carved from stone. But her thoughts were storming. That night, when the halls grew quiet and the palace slept, the Empress stood by her daughter's door. She watched the girl sleep peacefully, still wearing a small smile. The Empress's chest tightened. She wanted to reach out, to touch her daughter's hand, but she could not. Her frozen pride held her back, yet her mind repeated the same picture, the human waiter's dance, her daughter's laughter, and the strange warmth that had melted through her icy walls. The Empress turned away, her cloak sweeping behind her. But one thing was clear. This human was not ordinary. And for the first time in years, the cold Empress felt afraid, not of war, not of enemies, but of the strange warmth she could no longer ignore. The first dance. The next evening in the palace began like every other. Cold walls, silent halls, servants moving quickly, careful not to draw the Empress's gaze. Her golden eyes missed nothing. One mistake, and punishment would be swift. The young princess sat once more in her corner chair, quiet and still. Her small hands rested on her knees, her eyes fixed on the shining floor. To most, she looked invisible, forgotten, but not to one man. The human waiter. He had seen her smile the night before. He had heard her laugh, a sound so soft yet so powerful it seemed to break the ice in the room. That sound stayed in his heart, echoing long after he left the hall. He wanted to hear it again. He needed to. So when the soft music began once more, the waiter made a choice. His steps slowed, his arms loosened. And again, while balancing the tray of golden cups, he let his body move to the rhythm. It was not clumsy this time. It was deliberate. Each step carried a gentle rhythm, each turn a small spark of joy. He danced. The princess's head lifted. Her eyes widened again. She watched him move, her lips pressing together as if trying to hold back another laugh. But she failed. A soft giggle escaped, brighter than before. Her hands clapped once, weak but eager. The sound reached the Empress. From her throne she watched everything. Her face, as always, was cold and still. But inside, the storm grew stronger. Why was her daughter reacting this way? Why to this human? And why did the sight of it make her own heart twist with something she did not understand? The guards shifted uneasily. They too had noticed the human's movements. A servant daring to perform without permission? It was madness. But none moved forward. They waited for their ruler's command. The Empress raised her hand slightly, then froze. Her daughter had risen from her chair. Slowly, painfully, the little girl pushed herself up, using her weak legs. The room went silent. Even the music seemed to pause. For years, the princess had barely walked more than a few steps. Yet here she was, standing, her eyes fixed on the dancing waiter. The Empress's breath caught in her throat. The waiter noticed her struggle. Without breaking rhythm, he placed his tray down and extended his hand. His smile was warm, gentle, and patient. The princess hesitated. Her legs trembled. But she reached out. Her small hand touched his. Gasps echoed through the hall. Servants stared wide-eyed. Guards shifted nervously, waiting for punishment. But the Empress said nothing. The waiter moved slowly, guiding her step by step. He did not pull her. He did not rush. He simply gave her balance, letting her join his quiet dance. The princess's steps were shaky, her movements clumsy. But to her, it was magic. She laughed freely now, the sound bouncing against the cold palace walls, filling the room with warmth it had never known. The Empress's chest tightened. She gripped the arms of her throne. That laugh, it was like fire breaking through her icy heart. But along with warmth came fear. Fear of losing control, fear of showing weakness. Her empire was built on power, on cold perfection. If she allowed her heart to melt, what would happen? Still she could not look away. The human and her daughter moved together across the floor. To outsiders it was nothing. a clumsy child taking a few steps guided by a servant. But to the Empress it was a miracle. The princess was not just walking, she was living. The dance lasted only a few minutes, but in those minutes, the palace was transformed. The air was lighter, the silence broken, the coldness challenged. When the music ended, the princess collapsed back into her chair, breathing hard but smiling wider than ever before. Her cheeks were red, her eyes glowing. The waiter bowed respectfully, then returned to his duties as if nothing unusual had happened. But everyone knew something had changed. The Empress's eyes followed him, sharp and calculating. Who was this human, really? A simple servant could not cause such a change. No, he was something else. Dangerous, perhaps, or powerful in a way she had never seen. Whispers spread quickly among the staff. Did you see? The princess walked. She laughed. She touched him. The guards tightened their grips on their weapons. The generals would not like this. An empress showing interest in a slave? It was unthinkable. But the Empress did not care for whispers. She was too busy staring at her daughter. The girl was still smiling, still glowing. For the first time in years, she looked alive. And the Empress, for the first time in her reign, felt a crack in her pride. She wanted to rise from her throne, to kneel beside her daughter to ask, "Are you happy? Do you feel joy?" But her lips stayed sealed. Her pride chained her in silence. That night, she did not sleep. She sat alone in her private chamber, replaying the moment again and again. The human smile, her daughter's laughter, the warmth that dared to melt her cold heart. She whispered to herself, a voice she had not used in years. "What are you doing to me, human?" The stars outside glowed brighter, as if listening. The Empress clenched her fists. Tomorrow, she decided, she would watch again. And if this human dared to dance once more, she would not stop him. Not yet. Cracks in ice. The palace of the Alien Empress had always been silent, cold and strict. But after that second night, something was different. The silence was no longer complete. It carried the memory of laughter. It carried the echo of small footsteps. The Empress could not forget the sight. Her daughter had stood. Her daughter had laughed. And it was because of one man, a human servant, nothing more. Or at least that was what everyone believed. But the Empress was not convinced. From her high throne, she studied him in the days that followed. The human moved like every other servant, quiet, respectful, almost invisible. Yet when the music played, his body came alive. His steps carried warmth, his smile carried light. The princess responded to him as if he carried a magic no one else could give. The Empress felt something break inside her every time she saw them together. It was a strange, dangerous feeling. It was not anger. It was not fear. It was something softer, something she had buried long ago. Her generals noticed too. "They whisper, 'My Empress,'" said one of them, kneeling before her. "The servants say your daughter walks with the help of a human. They say she laughs in his presence. This cannot be allowed. Why not?" the Empress asked coldly, though her heart raced at his words. "Because it is weakness," the general replied. "If your people see you touched by a servant, if they see your daughter rely on a slave, they will believe you are losing control. Already some doubt your strength." The Empress dismissed him with a flick of her hand. But his warning stayed in her mind. Could kindness be seen as weakness? Could warmth destroy her rule? That night, she walked the long hallways of her palace, alone. The stars outside glittered against the glass walls, endless and eternal. For years she had ruled with an iron heart, and the galaxy had feared her. But now, one human threatened to undo it all. Not with a weapon, not with war, but with dance. She stopped outside her daughter's chamber. The girl was awake, sitting near her window, and there, standing beside her, was the human waiter. The Empress froze, hidden in the shadows. The man was not serving food or cleaning. He was moving his feet slowly, gently, showing the girl how to balance, how to shift her weight, how to sway to a rhythm. His voice was soft, encouraging her with every small step. The girl's laughter filled the air again. She clapped her hands, even when she stumbled. The human caught her before she fell, his touch steady and kind. The Empress's chest tightened painfully. Her hands curled into fists. She should storm in, order him punished, remind everyone of her power. But her feet would not move. She could only watch. Her daughter's face glowed with happiness she had never seen before, and in that glow the Empress felt something break, another crack in her frozen armor. But cracks are dangerous. By morning the whispers had grown louder. Servants talked in corners. Guards exchanged worried looks. "The Empress allows it," they muttered. "The human dances for the princess. She does not stop him." The council gathered in secret chambers. Some demanded the human be removed. Others feared the Empress's wrath if they acted without her word. The Empress heard all of it. She heard the whispers, the doubts, the fears. But instead of crushing them as she always did, she remained silent. Her silence was the greatest shock of all. That evening, the music returned to the dining hall. The human once again let his body move with the rhythm. This time, he did not hide it. His steps were bolder, his movements smoother. And once again, the princess rose from her seat. Reaching for him, the hall held its breath. Guards tensed, waiting for the Empress's signal. But she gave none. Instead, she leaned forward, her golden eyes fixed on her daughter. The girl's small hand rested in the human's. Her steps were unsteady, but she moved with joy, her laughter echoing louder than ever before. The Empress's heart ached. She wanted to rise, to step down from her throne, to hold her daughter's hand and join her. But her pride, her title, her crown, these chains held her still, and yet, for the first time in her reign, the Empress's lips trembled. Almost into a smile. The hall noticed. Whispers spread like fire. The Empress watches. The Empress allows it. The Empress feels. The generals were furious. They met in dark chambers that night, their voices sharp and filled with fear. "This human is dangerous," one hissed. "He weakens her. He must be removed. If the Empress will not act, then we must." Plans were formed. Shadows moved. But in her chamber, the Empress sat alone, her mind torn. She had built her empire on fear, yet fear had never given her daughter joy. Fear had never made her laugh. Fear had never filled the palace with life. The human had done what all her power could not. The cracks in her ice were spreading, and she knew it. But instead of sealing them, she whispered into the darkness, "Perhaps some ice must melt." Whispers of rebellion. The palace of the Alien Empress had never been a place for laughter. For years its walls echoed only with orders, the sound of boots, and the cold silence of power. But now, things were changing. Every evening, when the music played, the human waiter would dance. Every evening the young princess would rise, weak but smiling, to join him. And every evening, the Empress would sit still on her throne, her golden eyes fixed on them, saying nothing. Her silence was more shocking than her words. The servants whispered. The guards exchanged nervous glances. Even the generals of her empire began to worry. For the first time in memory, the Empress was allowing something they could not understand. Warmth. And warmth was dangerous. The generals' fear in a shadowed chamber deep within the palace. The generals gathered. They were proud warriors loyal to the empire, but their loyalty was to the crown, not the heart. "This cannot continue," growled the first general, his voice sharp like a blade. "A human slave dancing before the Empress? Dancing with her daughter? It is shameful." "Worse than shameful," said another. "It is weakness. If the people learn their ruler allows herself to be softened by a human, they will question her strength. And if they question her strength, they will question everything." The generals agreed on one thing. The human was a threat. And threats must be removed. The servants whisper. While the generals plotted, the servants whispered in corners. "Did you see the princess yesterday?" "She walked across the hall," one said, "and she laughed. I have never heard her laugh so freely." Another replied. Some were afraid. "The Empress will punish us all if she thinks we gossip." But others smiled secretly. Maybe this human brings something the Empress cannot. Maybe he is hope. Hope was a dangerous word in the Empire. Hope could grow into rebellion. The Empress watches the Empress, of course, knew everything. Nothing in her palace escaped her notice. She saw the fear in her generals. She heard the whispers of her servants. And above all, she saw the joy in her daughter's eyes every time the human danced. Her heart trembled with a battle she had never faced before. On one side stood power, control, and fear, the pillars of her throne. On the other side stood warmth, love, and something even greater, her daughter's happiness. Which would she choose? For now she did nothing. She only watched. But inside, the cracks in her ice were spreading deeper. The bold dance on. The fourth evening, something different happened. The human waiter entered the hall as usual, carrying trays of shining cups. The music began and he started to move with it, but this time he did not hide behind small steps. This time he danced boldly. His movements filled the hall with energy. He twirled, he spun, he let the rhythm guide him without fear. His feet tapped against the marble floor, echoing like drums of freedom. The princess gasped in delight. She stood quickly, her legs trembling but her spirit strong. She clapped her hands to the beat, trying to follow him. Her laugh rang out louder than ever before. The guards stiffened. The general's eyes darkened. But the Empress leaned forward. Her golden eyes burned with something none had seen before. It was not anger. It was not cold command. It was something far more dangerous for her enemies. Curiosity. She wanted to see more. The council's warning later that night. Her closest council dared to approach her throne. "My Empress," one said carefully, bowing low, "the people will hear of this. If they believe you are softened, they will see weakness. Weakness invites rebellion. We beg you, end this before it spreads." The Empress's voice was calm, sharp, and final. "Do you fear rebellion? Then perhaps it is you who are weak." The council fell silent. None dared to speak again. But behind her calm words, the Empress herself was torn. She knew they were right. Warmth could break her rule. And yet, when she thought of her daughter's smile, she wondered, what is the point of power without joy? The plan in the shadows. The generals, however, did not stop. They gathered again, their voices full of anger. "The Empress may hesitate, but we will not," said the first general. "The human will be removed, quietly, without her knowing. It must be done for the Empire." They nodded in agreement, and so, the shadow of danger fell over the human. The Empress's secret. That night the Empress returned once more to her daughter's chamber. She found the girl asleep, a peaceful smile on her face. The Empress stood there for a long time, silent. Finally she whispered words no one else could hear. "You have shown me what I thought was gone forever, and he is the reason." Her hand hovered above her daughter's small one, trembling. She longed to touch, to comfort, to give warmth, but still pride held her back. She turned away, her cloak sweeping across the floor. But as she walked into the dark hall, her thoughts grew sharper. If her generals dared to harm the human, if anyone dared to take away the one thing that gave her daughter life, then for the first time, the galaxy would not see her as the frozen Empress. They would see her as a mother. And a mother's wrath was far more dangerous than any empire. The human's secret. The generals moved in secret. Their plan was simple. Remove the human before his presence could spread weakness in the empire. No one would question a missing servant. Humans were countless, unimportant, replaceable. To them, he was nothing. But to the princess, he was everything. And to the Empress, though she would never say it aloud, he had become something she could not ignore. The Empress watches. Again that evening, the dining hall filled once more with soft music. The Empress sat tall on her throne, her face carved from stone. Servants bowed, guards lined the walls. The human waiter stepped forward with his tray. He did not look nervous, though whispers swirled around him like smoke. He had already heard the rumors. Some wanted him gone, maybe even dead. But when his eyes found the princess, his heart grew steady. She looked at him with bright, eager eyes. She wanted him to dance. And so, he did. The music carried him. His steps were light, smooth, and full of life. He bowed to the princess, inviting her into the rhythm. She rose from her seat, leaning on him, her legs shaking but her spirit strong. Together they moved. The hall froze in shock. Once again the girl walked. Once again she laughed. The Empress's golden eyes narrowed. She was no fool. This was no ordinary servant. The Empress's command, when the hall emptied and the night grew quiet, the Empress summoned the human alone. He entered her private chamber, bowing low. "Do you know who I am?" she asked, her voice sharp and cold. "Yes, my Empress," he said softly. "And do you know what I could do to you? For daring to touch my daughter, for daring to dance before me?" "Yes, my Empress." Her golden eyes burned. "Then why do you do it?" The human raised his head. His eyes were not defiant, but they were steady. "Because your daughter deserves joy. She deserves to feel alive. And because once I failed someone I loved." The Empress tilted her head, curious despite herself. "Failed?" The man took a deep breath. His voice trembled as he spoke. "I had a sister. She was younger than me. She was born weak, unable to walk properly. Every day I tried to make her smile. I would dance for her. I would spin, fall, and make myself a fool just to hear her laugh. And she would laugh. Oh, how she laughed." He paused, his eyes clouding with pain. "But one winter she grew sick. Too sick. I thought my dances would be enough to heal her heart, but they weren't. She died in my arms." Silence filled the chamber. Even the Empress's cold breath caught for a moment. "I could not save her," the man whispered. "But when I see your daughter, when I see her smile, it feels like I am keeping a promise to my sister. A promise that joy should live, even in fragile hearts." The crack widens. The Empress turned away, her cloak sweeping behind her. She hid her face, but inside her heart thundered. For years she had believed weakness was death, that only power kept her empire alive. But this human spoke with a strength she did not understand, a strength that came from loss, from pain, from love. And her daughter responded to it. Her frozen heart cracked deeper. The princess's words. The next morning the princess surprised everyone. She tugged at her mother's sleeve while sitting in her chair. "Mother," she said, her voice small but clear. "Can he stay? Can he always dance with me?" The entire court gasped. No one spoke to the Empress so directly. But the Empress only looked at her daughter, her expression unreadable. "Yes," she said at last. "He will stay." The princess beamed. The human bowed deeply, his chest heavy with relief. But in the shadows the generals clenched their fists. The general's decision. That night the generals met again in secret. "The Empress is blinded," one growled. "This human has poisoned her mind and her daughter's heart. If we wait longer, he will destroy everything." "Then we cannot wait," another said. "The Empress may protect him, but we will not. Tomorrow night he disappears." Their plan was set. The Empress alone. In her private chamber, the Empress stood by the great window, staring into the endless stars. Her daughter's laughter still echoed in her ears. The human's words about his sister still burned in her mind. She touched her chest, feeling the strange ache within. Was this weakness? Or was it something she had lost long ago? Her empire had been built on fear, but her daughter's joy, born from the dance of a human, made her question everything. She whispered to the stars, "Who is truly strong, the one who rules with fear, or the one who gives joy with nothing but a dance?" Her golden eyes softened. For the first time she feared the answer. The shadow moves far below the palace halls in the dark corridors where secrets lived. Shadows moved. A plan was already unfolding. The general's men were preparing. The human's life was hanging by a thread. But the Empress did not yet know. She only knew one thing. The human was no ordinary servant. He was a man who carried pain, love, and a strange power she had never felt before. And though she tried to deny it, her heart whispered the truth. If they touch him, if they harm him, I will not forgive them. The cracks in her ice were no longer small lines. They were spreading wide, dangerous, unstoppable, and the galaxy would soon learn what happened when the frozen Empress began to melt. The storm inside the throne. The Empire was built on fear. Every planet knew the power of the Alien Empress. Her word was law, her command unbreakable. For years she had ruled with iron silence, her golden eyes colder than the stars. But now, whispers spread faster than fire. The princess laughed. She walked. A human dances with her every night. And the Empress allows it. For the first time the galaxy questioned, was the frozen Empress melting? The princesses danced that evening. The palace gathered once more. Music filled the grand hall. The human waiter stepped forward, his heart steady despite the eyes of every guard fixed on him. He began to dance, not with fear, but with purpose. The Princess rose quickly, her small hands reaching for him. The hall gasped. She walked across the shining floor, step by step, guided by the human's hand. She stumbled, but she laughed at her own clumsiness. The laughter spread like sunlight, breaking through clouds. The Empress sat tall on her throne, her face cold. But inside a storm raged. Every beat of the music struck her heart. Every laugh of her daughter shook her walls. She wanted to stand, to join them. She wanted to hold her daughter, to feel her warmth. But pride chained her still. The generals. Fury at the far end of the hall, the generals watched with dark eyes. Each step of the princess was to them a blow to the Empire's image. "This is madness," one hissed. "The Empress is distracted," another growled. "She is no longer the ruler we need," a third whispered. And so their plan hardened. They would not wait any longer. Tonight the human would be removed. Forever. The Empress's conflict after the dance, the princess was carried back to her chamber, her face glowing with joy. The human bowed and returned to his duties. The hall emptied, but the Empress did not move. She sat alone, her golden eyes staring at the floor where her daughter had just walked. Her chest ached. She remembered the man's words about his sister. She remembered her daughter's plea. Can he stay? And she remembered her own answer. Yes. Her mind screamed that this was weakness, that a ruler could not allow her heart to be touched. But her heart whispered something else. This is not weakness. This is life. The storm inside her throne grew stronger. The secret moved that night. As the palace grew quiet, shadows moved. The general's men slipped through hidden doors, carrying blades dipped in poison. Their orders were simple. Remove the human. No one must know. But someone did know. The princess, restless, had woken in the night. She heard voices in the dark, corridor outside her chamber. She caught words like slave, remove, and tonight. Her small heart raced. She may have been weak in body, but in spirit she was her mother's daughter. She pushed herself up and hurried as fast as her fragile legs could carry her. She had to warn him. The human's choice. The human was alone in the servant quarters, sitting quietly with tired feet. He had danced for hours, but his heart was full. He thought of the princess's smile, of the way she tried to match his steps. It was enough to heal his old wounds even for a moment. Then the door burst open. The princess stumbled inside, breathing hard. They want to hurt you," she cried, clutching his arm. "Mother's generals, they will take you tonight." The human froze. He had expected danger, but not this soon. His first thought was fear. His second thought was her. "I will not leave you," he said firmly. The girl shook her head. "No. If they catch you, you will die." He knelt, taking her small hands. "I promised my sister once that Joy must live even if I cannot. And now I promise you the same. I will not run. I will dance even if it costs me." The princess's eyes filled with tears. She clung to him as if he might vanish. The Empress's awakening. At that same moment, the Empress stood before her great window staring into the endless stars. She felt it, the unease in the air, the shadow moving in her palace. Her instincts, sharpened by years of ruling, screamed of betrayal. She turned sharply. Her cloak swept behind her like a blade. She marched through the halls, her golden eyes burning with fury, and then she heard it, her daughter's voice crying in the distance. The storm inside her throne broke. The clash. The general's men reached the servant quarters, blades ready. But when they pushed open the door, they found more than the human and the princess. They found the Empress. She stood tall, her golden eyes blazing with fire they had never seen before. Her voice cut like thunder. "You dare raise a hand in my palace?" The assassins froze. They dropped to their knees, trembling. But the Empress did not forgive. Her hand lifted, and with a single command, her guards seized them. The human shielded the princess behind him, ready to fight if he had to. But the Empress's gaze stopped him. It was not cold. Not tonight. It was burning. The mother's wrath. She turned to her generals, who had followed in silence. "You call this strength? To harm a man who brings joy to my child? To silence laughter, because you fear weakness?" Her voice shook the hall. The generals bowed, but their fear was too late. "For years I ruled with ice," the Empress said. "But tonight you have shown me the truth. Fear does not make me strong. Love does." Her hand closed into a fist. "And if you ever threaten him again, you will learn what true fear is." The generals trembled. None dared speak. The silent smile. The princess clung to her mother's robes, her eyes wide. For the first time, the Empress bent down and touched her daughter's cheek. The girl's tears turned into a smile. And though only for a moment, the Empress's lips curved too. A smile. Small, but real. The human watched, his heart heavy with wonder. The frozen Empress had melted. Not completely, not yet, but enough for the galaxy to tremble, because a mother's storm had begun. The Empress who smiled. The palace was no longer silent. Where once only cold echoes lived, now footsteps, laughter, and whispers of change filled its halls. The story of the frozen Empress watching her daughter dance with a human had already spread. Across the empire, people asked the same question. Was the Empress still the heart of ice they feared, or had she begun to change? The general's defeat. After the failed attempt on the human's life, the generals stood humiliated. Their plan had been shattered by the very ruler they sought to protect. They knelt before her throne, trembling as her golden eyes blazed. "You believed weakness was joy," she said, her voice sharp as a blade. "You believed laughter would break my rule, but you were wrong." None dared answer. "You will obey," she continued, "or you will face my wrath. And let the empire hear this truth. My daughter's joy is my strength, not my weakness." The generals bowed so low their foreheads touched the floor. Fear kept them alive, but deep in their hearts they knew the empire had changed forever. The humans' doubt in the quiet after the storm. The human felt uneasy. He had survived the general's plot, but at what cost? He was only a servant, a man taken from a distant world. Why had fate placed him here in the palace of the most feared ruler in the galaxy? He wanted to believe he had done good, for the princess at least, but for the Empress? He was not sure. That night, he stood in the empty hall where he had danced so many times. He looked at the polished floor, remembering his sister's laugh, remembering the promise he had made to himself, to bring joy wherever he could. His steps began to move again, quiet and simple. He danced not for the court, not for the Empress, but for the memory of a girl he had once lost. And yet unseen, the Empress was watching. The Empress's heart. From the shadows she stood, her cloak wrapped around her like night itself. She saw the way he moved, graceful yet heavy with pain. She saw the way his eyes carried memories deeper than the stars. For the first time, she understood. He was not dangerous because he was human. He was dangerous because he carried something she had, long buried. Love. Love that could heal. Love that could change. Love that could break empires and build them anew. Her frozen heart trembled again. The daughters' dance. The next evening, the hall was full once more. The human entered with the princess by his side, her small steps stronger than ever. This time, she did not wait for him to invite her. She walked to the center of the floor on her own, lifting her chin proudly. "I want to dance," she said softly. The human bowed to her, and together they began to move. The princess stumbled, but she laughed each time, her joy stronger than her weakness. The court gasped, watching her take steps no one believed possible. And then something even greater happened. The Empress rose from her throne. The Empress joins. The hall froze. Servants stopped breathing. Guards gripped their spears. No one had ever seen the Empress leave her seat in such a way. She walked down the steps slowly, her black robes trailing like shadows, her crown glimmering under the lights. She stopped before the human and her daughter. The princess's eyes widened. "Mother!" The Empress's golden eyes softened. She extended her hand, not to the human, not to the court, but to her daughter. "May I dance with you?" she asked. The hall gasped. The world seemed to stop. The princess smiled so brightly it could have lit the galaxy. She took her mother's hand, trembling with joy, and for the first time in history, the Empress danced. The dance of three it was not perfect. Her steps were stiff, her movements sharp, but her daughter did not care. She laughed and clapped, spinning, between her mother and the human. The human guided them gently, weaving their movements together until it was not one, not two, but three hearts dancing as one. The palace, once a place of fear, was filled with something it had never known before. Warmth. Servants wept silently. Guards lowered their weapons. Even the generals hidden at the edge of the hall could not deny the power before them. The Empress was not weakened. She was stronger than ever. The smile. When the music ended, silence fell heavy. All eyes turned to the Empress. And then it happened. Her lips curved upward, small and hesitant, but real. A smile. The frozen Empress smiled. The court trembled. Some cried. Some bowed so deeply their heads hit the floor. For they knew what this meant. Their ruler was no longer untouchable ice. She was something greater. She was a mother who had found her heart again. The galaxy whispers by dawn. The story had spread across the stars. The Empress smiled, they said. She danced with her daughter. She spared a human. The frozen Empress is no longer frozen. Some feared what this meant. Would kindness weaken her empire? Would enemies rise? But others saw hope. If even the coldest ruler in the galaxy could change, perhaps the galaxy itself could change too. The human's place. The human returned to his duties, but he was no longer just a servant. He was the one who had brought joy to the heart of the empire, the one who had melted the ice. The princess clung to him like a brother she never had. The Empress, though still proud and stern, no longer looked at him as a slave. She looked at him as something more, proof that even broken hearts could bring life again. The Empress who smiled that night alone in her chamber, the Empress stood by her window. The stars stretched endless before her. For years they had been cold companions, but tonight they looked warmer. She touched her chest, feeling the ache of change. She whispered softly, words only the stars could hear. "I thought love was weakness. I was wrong. Love is strength. My daughter's joy is my power." and I will never lose it again." Her golden eyes glowed softly. Her lips curved once more. The frozen Empress was gone. In her place stood something new, the Empress who smiled.